The ridge was lost. Enemy armor surrounded them, communications were jammed, and evacuation was impossible. The commander had just ordered retreat when she reached for her radio. No one had paid much attention to this quiet technical specialist before. She spoke just 3 words, and seconds later, the unmistakable roar of A-10 Warthogs shook the valley. The lead enemy tank vanished in a fiery explosion, followed by devastating precision strikes that obliterated the entire assault force. As dust settled over the battlefield, every soldier stared at the woman who had just turned certain defeat into victory with a single coded phrase. Who was she really? From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you enjoy stories about extraordinary people hiding in plain sight, subscribe to join our storytelling community and discover more untold legends. The sun hung low over Forward Operating Base Redemption, casting long shadows across hastily constructed defensive positions. Major Thaddeus Blackwood stood at the edge of the command post, binoculars trained on the valley below, where dust clouds marked the approach of enemy armor. His weathered face betrayed nothing, but the tight grip on his binoculars told a different story. "Sir, latest recon imagery," Lieutenant Zendaya Wright said, spreading satellite photos across the tactical table. The intelligence officer's usual confidence had given way to grim efficiency. They have deployed their new T-90 variants along the eastern approach, at least 16 units confirmed. Blackwood studied the images without speaking. This was not supposed to happen. Operation Steadfast Shield had been presented as a routine peacekeeping mission: maintain the border, show presence, deter incursions. 3 weeks in, everything had changed. The enemy had revealed capabilities that were not in any intelligence briefing, deploying advanced electronic warfare systems that had systematically dismantled their communications and targeting systems. "And our air support?" he finally asked, already knowing the answer. "Still grounded, sir. Their anti-air grid extends well beyond our position. Nothing is getting through that net." Around them, the command center hummed with tense activity. Communications specialists tried to establish contact with neighboring units. Tactical officers marked new enemy positions on digital maps. Medical personnel quietly prepared for casualties. At the far corner of the room, technical specialist Alara Frost sat at her communications station, headphones on, fingers moving across her keyboard with practiced precision. She had arrived with the last personnel rotation 3 weeks ago. Most soldiers barely registered her presence. She ate alone, spoke little, and performed her duties without drawing attention. Her uniform lacked the customizations and personal touches common among long-deployed soldiers. Captain Riker, the operations officer, approached Blackwood with a tablet displaying ammunition counts. "We are down to 60% on small arms, 40 on heavy weapons. The convoy that was hit was carrying our resupply." The convoy. Blackwood felt the weight of that loss. 12 soldiers, 3 vehicles, and critical supplies ambushed 5 miles from the base. No survivors reported. "Sir," Wright interjected, pointing to new movement on the satellite feed, "they are repositioning their artillery. If they establish fire control on these coordinates," she drew a circle encompassing their 3 remaining defensive outposts. "They will cut us off completely," Blackwood finished. "Get the platoon leaders in here, now." As officers assembled, Blackwood noticed Frost watching them. For a brief moment, their eyes met. Something in her gaze, a calculated assessment that seemed out of place for her position, caught his attention, but the moment passed as quickly as it came. "Gentlemen," Blackwood addressed the gathered officers once they had assembled, "I will not sugarcoat this. We are facing a force with superior numbers, positioning, and now equipment. They have cut our supply lines, compromised our communications, and neutralized our air support." He gestured to the tactical display showing enemy positions. "Their advance indicates they have got detailed knowledge of our defensive capabilities. Intelligence suggests they are testing new electronic warfare systems specifically designed to counter our protocols." The room fell silent as implications sank in. "Are we being hung out to dry, sir?" Lieutenant Ashford asked, voicing what everyone was thinking. "Command is aware of our situation," Blackwood replied carefully. "But with the current electronic countermeasures in place, extraction assets cannot reach our position safely." He paused, scanning the faces of officers he had served with through 2 deployments. Good soldiers, dedicated professionals. They deserved better than this. "This ridge is lost," he finally said. "We need to prepare for tactical withdrawal to save who we can. We will establish fallback positions here and here. He indicated points on the map. Essential personnel and equipment only. We move at dusk. As officers absorbed this grim assessment, Technical Specialist Frost spoke up from her station. "Sir, if I may," she said, her voice quiet but clear, "there is a vulnerability in their advance we could exploit." All eyes turned to her. Several officers exchanged skeptical glances. Frost approached the tactical display. "Their electronic warfare systems are creating a comprehensive umbrella, but there is a pattern to their emissions cycling. A brief window where—" "Stick to your comms, tech specialist," Captain Riker interrupted dismissively. "Let the combat officers handle tactics." Frost fell silent, stepping back to her station without protest. Blackwood gave her a brief, apologetic glance before continuing the evacuation briefing. As officers dispersed to prepare their units, Wright lingered behind. "Sir, about Specialist Frost," she said quietly. "Something is not right with her file." "Meaning?" "Her transfer documents list previous assignment with 4th Saigant Battalion at Fort Gordon, but I have got contacts there. They have no record of her." Blackwood frowned. "Could be classified previous posting. Not uncommon for technical specialists." "Maybe," Wright conceded. "But it is not just that. She is accessing communication frequencies outside our normal bands. I have caught her twice now." Before Blackwood could respond, alarms blared throughout the base. A communications officer rushed over. "Sir, Outpost Charlie is under direct assault. They are reporting enemy infantry has breached their perimeter." The base erupted into organized chaos as soldiers rushed to defensive positions. Blackwood began issuing rapid orders, the conversation about Frost temporarily forgotten. Hours later, as dusk approached, the situation had deteriorated further. 2 of their 3 outposts had been overrun. Enemy armor was now within direct fire range of the main compound. Blackwood ordered final evacuation preparations. Non-essential personnel would move to extraction points immediately, while combat units provided covering fire from fallback positions. As soldiers rushed to comply, Wright approached Frost, who was calmly packing her communications equipment. "Who are you really?" Wright demanded, keeping her voice low. "Your file says you transferred from Signals Intelligence, but I have called every contact I have. Nobody knows you." Frost regarded her evenly. "Would it matter if I told you?" "It would to the soldiers whose lives depend on knowing who is really in this fight with them." Something shifted in Frost's expression, a brief glimpse of something harder, more assured than her specialist persona suggested. Before she could respond, the base shook with the impact of artillery fire. The enemy's main assault had begun. Blackwood's voice cut through the chaos over the command channel. "All units, execute evacuation plan Delta. This is not a drill. Repeat, all units execute evacuation plan Delta." As soldiers scrambled for their designated positions, Frost made a decision. She reached beneath her standard issue equipment and retrieved a device no one had seen before, a compact, unmarked communications unit unlike anything in their standard inventory. Wright watched, hand moving instinctively toward her sidearm. "What is that? What are you doing?" Frost did not answer. Instead, she activated the device and spoke 3 words, her voice suddenly carrying absolute authority. "Zero Horizon active." Seconds stretched into an eternity of silence after Frost's transmission. Wright stood frozen, hand still hovering near her weapon. Around them, the sounds of the base preparing for evacuation continued. Orders shouted, equipment moved, the distant crump of artillery. Then came the sound. Low at first, then building to an unmistakable roar that cut through everything else. A-10 Warthogs. The distinctive engine noise was impossible to mistake for anything else. "That is not possible," Wright whispered, her hand dropping away from her weapon. "There is no air support within range, and even if there was, they could not penetrate the anti-air grid." Frost calmly returned the communication device to its hidden compartment. "There is now." Outside, the sky erupted with precision devastation. The lead enemy tanks, which had been advancing confidently toward the base, vanished in coordinated explosions. Infantry positions that had been pressing their advantage suddenly found themselves under devastating strafing runs. The command center erupted in confused celebration as tactical displays showed enemy forces disintegrating under the impossible air assault. Blackwood rushed to the observation point, binoculars trained on the valley below, where A-10s executed maneuvers that defied conventional tactical doctrine, somehow evading anti-aircraft fire that should have dropped them from the sky. "How?" he managed, lowering his binoculars to stare at the destruction below. How is this happening? He turned to find Frost standing beside him, her demeanor completely transformed. Gone was the deferential technical specialist. In her place stood someone with the unmistakable bearing of command. "Who are you?" he asked, the evacuation orders forgotten as the tide of battle reversed below them. Wright approached, then stood at attention and saluted Frost. "Zero Horizon," she said quietly. "I thought it was just a rumor." Frost returned the salute with practiced formality. "Your intelligence background served you well, Lieutenant. Yes, Zero Horizon is very real." Blackwood looked between them in confusion. "Would someone explain what is happening here?" "Major Ilara Frost, commanding officer of Zero Horizon Forward Operations," she introduced herself properly. "Your base was designated a strategic observation point 3 weeks ago when intelligence indicated unusual enemy activity in this sector." "Your rank is Major?" Blackwood asked, processing this revelation. "Yes. My actual commission predates yours by 4 years, Major Blackwood." As the airstrike continued in the valley below, coordinating with impossible precision despite the electronic warfare measures that had crippled all other Allied communications, Frost led them back to the command center. Zero Horizon is a classified program that embeds observers with direct access to strategic assets that officially do not exist in contested regions, she explained, accessing the command console with an authorization code that immediately overrode all security protocols. "We maintain constant presence in potential flashpoints, invisible until absolutely necessary." "Every base in this sector has someone like you?" Blackwood asked, still struggling to reconcile the quiet specialist with the commanding officer now efficiently directing the air assault through her mysterious communications device. "No," she replied, "only the ones that matter." The implications sank in. Their seemingly unimportant outpost was far more strategically valuable than they had been told. As enemy forces fell back in disarray, new communications suddenly broke through on channels that had been jammed for days. A general's voice addressing Frost directly. "Valkyrie Actual, this is Overlord, status report." "Overlord, Valkyrie Actual," Frost responded, using a call sign Blackwood had never heard. "Package exposed but secure. Countermeasures deployed successfully. Enemy testing capabilities neutralized." "Acknowledged, Valkyrie. Containment team inbound. ETA 2 hours. Maintain position." When the communication ended, Blackwood found himself asking the question foremost in his mind. Why? Why place such an asset here and not tell us? We could have coordinated, prepared. "That is precisely why you were not told," Frost replied. "Zero Horizon works because the enemy does not know it exists. They deployed their new electronic warfare systems here specifically to test them against standard NATO protocols before wider implementation. They needed to believe they were observing normal Allied responses." "So we were bait," Captain Riker said bitterly from across the room. "You were necessary," Frost corrected. "This operation revealed critical information about their new capabilities, vulnerabilities, and tactical doctrine, information that will save thousands of lives across multiple theaters." Wright, who had been studying the tactical displays with new understanding, looked up. "The convoy attack. You knew it was coming." A flash of something, perhaps regret, crossed Frost's face. "We suspected, but allowing it to proceed was the only way to confirm they had deployed their full electronic warfare suite. Without that confirmation, today's counterstrike would have been impossible." Riker stepped forward aggressively. "Those were our people on that convoy." "And their sacrifice potentially saved tens of thousands more," Frost replied evenly. "I do not expect you to understand or forgive that calculation, Captain. Strategic Command does not make these decisions lightly." Before tensions could escalate further, Blackwood intervened. "What happens now?" "A specialized containment team is inbound to secure this location and gather intelligence from the enemy equipment we just disabled. Your unit will be debriefed and reassigned." "And you?" Blackwood asked. "Once the situation is stabilized, I will receive new deployment orders. Zero Horizon assets never remain in place after activation." As the command center returned to organized activity, now coordinating with the incoming support rather than planning evacuation, Blackwood found himself reevaluating every interaction he had had with Frost over the past 3 weeks. The quiet suggestions that he had dismissed, the tactical observations he had ignored. "I owe you an apology," he said when they had a moment alone. I should have listened earlier. No, she replied. You behaved exactly as expected. Zero Horizon operators are embedded precisely because we need to observe natural command decisions under pressure. If you had treated me differently, it would have compromised the operation. Still, Blackwood insisted, lives might have been saved if I had been less dismissive. Frost studied him thoughtfully. Your priority was protecting your people with the information you had. That is exactly what you should have done. Hours later, as helicopters landed with reinforcements and specialized equipment, Wright approached Frost with a tablet. I have been granted temporary access to certain Zero Horizon files, she said, her voice low enough that only Frost and Blackwood could hear. You have been doing this for 12 years. The tablet displayed redacted mission reports spanning over a decade. Photographs showed Frost, always in the background, always in different roles and ranks, present at numerous miraculous battlefield turnarounds. Always unacknowledged, always departing before commendations were distributed. 15 years, Frost corrected quietly. Some deployments remain classified even at your current access level. Why? Blackwood asked. Why choose this role? No recognition, no credit, constant danger. Frost's expression remained neutral, but something in her eyes suggested deeper waters. Some missions matter more than medals, Major. A year passed since the day Alara Frost had revealed the existence of Zero Horizon at Forward Operating Base Redemption. The base itself had been redesignated as Strategic Monitoring Station Epsilon, its importance now formally acknowledged in classified briefings. Major Blackwood, now Lieutenant Colonel Blackwood, had been transferred to a specialized joint task force focused on countering emerging electronic warfare threats. His experience at Redemption had proven invaluable as Allied forces adapted to the intelligence gathered from that operation. On the anniversary of what military circles now quietly referred to as the Redemption Incident, Blackwood received encrypted coordinates for a meeting. No sender was identified, but he recognized the signature encryption pattern immediately. The location was a quiet coffee shop in a nondescript government district of the capital. Blackwood arrived in civilian clothes as instructed, scanning the room before identifying a woman seated alone by the window. Her appearance had changed, blonde hair now dark brown, styled differently, but he recognized the focused intensity in her eyes immediately. Major Frost, he greeted her, taking the seat across from her. Colonel Blackwood, she replied with a slight smile. Though officially, I am Dr. Eleanor Finch today, Defense Policy Analyst. Another cover. Always. She sipped her coffee. Congratulations on your promotion. The task force is doing exceptional work. Thanks to the intelligence gathered at Redemption, he acknowledged. The enemy's electronic warfare program suffered a significant setback. They are still trying to understand how their systems failed so completely. That was the objective, she nodded. They believed they were testing us, but we were testing them. A server approached, and their conversation paused while Blackwood ordered coffee. When they were alone again, he leaned forward. I doubt you arranged this meeting to reminisce about old missions, he said quietly. Perceptive as always, Frost replied. I have a proposition for you. Your task force has proven effective at implementing countermeasures based on Redemption intelligence. But there are indications the enemy is developing new systems, ones we have not yet been able to observe in field conditions. And you need another Redemption, Blackwood concluded. Not exactly. We need a more integrated approach this time. Zero Horizon works best when it operates independently, but in this case, we believe a coordinated operation would be more effective. Coordinated how? Your task force would deploy alongside a Zero Horizon asset, aware of their presence but maintaining operational separation. You would appear to be conducting standard electronic countermeasure testing, providing cover for the real objective. Blackwood considered this. That is a significant deviation from Zero Horizon protocols, at least the ones I am familiar with. The threat landscape is evolving, Frost acknowledged. Our methods must evolve with it. The success at Redemption led to certain operational reassessments. And you want my task force specifically? I recommended you personally, she confirmed. Your actions at Redemption demonstrated something rare in command officers, especially when dealing with classified assets. And what is that? The ability to adapt quickly when operational realities change. Most commanders, when discovering they have been kept in the dark about mission parameters, either overcompensate by trying to take control or become resentful and uncooperative. You did neither. You integrated new information and adjusted your approach immediately. Blackwood smiled slightly. I had good motivation. The base was about to be overrun. Precisely. You prioritized the mission and your people over ego or protocol. That is exactly what we need for this operation. As they discussed the broad outlines of what was being proposed, Blackwood found himself studying Frost. Despite the physical changes to her appearance, there was something fundamentally unchanged about her, a core of focused determination that transcended whatever role she was playing. There is something I have wondered about since redemption, he said when there was a pause in the operational discussion. How do you do it? Move from base to base, identity to identity, never being recognized for what you accomplish. For a moment, she seemed to weigh how much to reveal. It is not about recognition, she finally said. It is about effectiveness. Zero Horizon was created because we recognized that certain capabilities are most powerful when the enemy does not know they exist. That principle extends to the operatives themselves. But still, Blackwood pressed, it must be difficult, always being underestimated, dismissed. On the contrary, she replied with the faintest smile. Being underestimated is a tactical advantage, one I have employed successfully for 15 years. As their meeting concluded and they prepared to part ways, Frost handed him a small data drive. The full operational briefing, she explained. Review it with your XO only. If you decide to proceed, the authorization codes are included. Blackwood pocketed the drive. And if we accept this mission, will you be the Zero Horizon asset deployed with us? That information is not included in the briefing, she replied, professional once more. Of course, he nodded, understanding the protocol. As she stood to leave, she paused. Colonel Blackwood, regardless of your decision, I want you to know that what your unit accomplished at Redemption saved countless lives. The intelligence gathered there prevented 3 major offensive operations that would have resulted in significant casualties. That is good to know, he said sincerely, though I suspect we will never see those victories in any official record. No, she agreed. The most important victories rarely make it into the history books. That is something you learn to accept in this line of work. With that, she departed, moving through the crowded cafe with the same efficient economy he remembered, blending into the flow of government workers and disappearing from sight within moments. 3 days later, Blackwood's task force received new deployment orders. The mission parameters matched exactly what Frost had outlined in their meeting. Whatever came next, he understood now that there were layers to warfare that most soldiers never saw, invisible assets working in the shadows to turn the tide when conventional forces faced impossible odds. The joint operation, codenamed Obsidian Shield, deployed to a remote monitoring station in contested territory 3 months after Blackwood's meeting with Frost. On paper, the mission was to test new electronic countermeasures against potential threats. In reality, it was a carefully orchestrated trap for the enemy's next-generation warfare systems. Blackwood's task force had been expanded to include specialists in signals intelligence, cyber warfare, and advanced electronic countermeasures. They set up their equipment with deliberate visibility, ensuring enemy surveillance would detect their presence and capabilities. Lieutenant Colonel Blackwood stood in the command center, reviewing the deployment with his executive officer, Major Wright, the former lieutenant from Redemption who had been promoted and specifically requested for this assignment. Perimeter sensors are active, defensive positions established, Wright reported. We are broadcasting exactly the electronic signature specified in the mission parameters. And our special attachment? Blackwood asked quietly. Wright nodded toward a corner of the operations center where a civilian consultant worked quietly at a specialized communications station. Dr. Soren Caldwell, supposedly an expert in electromagnetic field analysis, had arrived with the advance team. His credentials were impeccable, his manner unassuming. In position and operational, Wright confirmed, though only you and I know the actual role. The Zero Horizon asset had been embedded with perfect cover, just as at Redemption. But this time, Blackwood knew to watch for the subtle indicators, the moments when expertise exceeded what should be possible for someone with the stated background. Over the next 2 weeks, the operation proceeded according to plan. The task force conducted overt electronic warfare exercises, deliberately revealing certain capabilities while keeping others hidden. Enemy activity in the region increased gradually, exactly as intelligence had predicted. On the 14th day, during the evening briefing, Dr. Caldwell approached Blackwood with a data tablet. "Colonel, I have detected an anomalous signal pattern at these coordinates," he said, his voice carrying the precise, measured tone of a scientific professional. "It appears to be some form of advanced surveillance system, but the signature does not match anything in our database." Blackwood studied the information, recognizing what was happening. This was the moment the operation had been designed to create, the first confirmation that the enemy had deployed their new system. "Recommendations, Doctor?" he asked, maintaining the pretense of their professional relationship. "Continue normal operations but adjust our countermeasure profile to this configuration," Caldwell replied, showing a technical schematic. "It should appear to the surveillance system that we are unaware of its presence while allowing us to gather more data on its capabilities." Over the next 3 days, tension built steadily in the command center as enemy activity increased dramatically around their position. Surveillance drones became more frequent. Long-range reconnaissance units were detected approaching their outer perimeter. "They are testing our response patterns," Wright observed during a private briefing with Blackwood. "Exactly as we wanted." "And we are giving them exactly what they expect to see," Blackwood agreed. "A standard electronic warfare unit conducting routine exercises, unaware of their advanced surveillance." On the morning of the 18th day, alarms sounded throughout the base. Enemy forces had launched a coordinated electronic attack, targeting their communications and defensive systems with a sophistication that exceeded anything previously encountered. "Multiple penetration attempts detected across all secure channels," reported the communications officer. "They are using some kind of adaptive algorithm that keeps shifting to bypass our firewalls." Throughout the command center, systems began failing as the enemy attack overwhelmed their defenses. Screens flickered, communications dropped, and defensive perimeter sensors went offline one by one. "Implement emergency protocols," Blackwood ordered, projecting calm confidence despite the deteriorating situation. "Fall back to secondary systems and prepare for possible ground assault." As his team scrambled to respond, Dr. Caldwell worked silently at his station, apparently unaffected by the chaos around him. While other systems failed, his equipment remained operational, protected by security measures not included in the base's standard protocols. "Sir," Wright approached Blackwood quietly, "Dr. Caldwell is requesting permission to implement countermeasure Omega. That was not in our original mission parameters." Blackwood glanced toward the civilian consultant, whose expression had changed subtly. The academic demeanor had fallen away, replaced by the focused intensity he remembered from Redemption. "Approved," Blackwood replied without hesitation. "Give him whatever resources he needs." Within minutes, Caldwell had connected his specialized equipment to the base's primary communications array. His fingers moved across his keyboard with practiced efficiency as he implemented programming that no civilian consultant should possess. "What exactly is countermeasure Omega?" Wright asked quietly as they watched him work. "I do not know," Blackwood admitted. "It was not included in our briefing, but I suspect we are about to witness why zero-horizon assets are deployed only at critical strategic points." Caldwell completed his work and turned to Blackwood. "Colonel, you may want to alert your personnel. What happens next will be disorienting for anyone not expecting it." Blackwood nodded and issued a brief warning to his staff. Moments later, Caldwell activated his countermeasure. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Every electronic system in the command center shut down simultaneously, plunging them into darkness for 3 seconds before emergency lighting activated. When the main systems came back online, they were operating on entirely different protocols. "What just happened?" demanded Captain Espinoza, the cyber warfare specialist. "We allowed the enemy to penetrate our systems with their new electronic warfare package," Caldwell explained, his voice now carrying the unmistakable authority of command. "Now we have full access to their attack architecture. Their own systems are currently being mapped and indexed by our countermeasures." The tactical displays showed something extraordinary. The enemy forces that had been coordinating the electronic attack were now experiencing the same systems failures they had inflicted moments before. But more significantly, their entire command and control network was becoming visible on Allied screens, revealing positions, capabilities, and vulnerabilities that had been hidden until now. "My God," whispered Wright. "We just turned their own weapon against them." "Not exactly," Caldwell corrected. We allowed them to deploy their full capability so we could capture its operational signature. The actual counterstrike is just beginning. Over the next hour, they watched as the enemy's entire electronic warfare infrastructure suffered cascading failures across multiple sectors. Systems designed to operate in perfect coordination now worked against each other, creating vulnerabilities that would take months to identify and correct. When the operation was complete, Caldwell approached Blackwood. "Colonel, may I speak with you privately?" In Blackwood's office, away from the rest of the staff, Dr. Soren Caldwell's demeanor changed completely. Gone was any pretense of the academic consultant. "The mission has been accomplished," he said. "We have successfully captured the enemy's complete next-generation electronic warfare architecture. Analysis indicates at least an 18-month setback to their deployment timeline." "Impressive work, Doctor," Blackwood replied, "though I suspect that is not your actual title." For the first time, Caldwell smiled. "No, Major Elliot Remington, Zero Horizon Special Operations. Dr. Caldwell exists only on paper." "Like Dr. Finch," Blackwood observed, "and Technical Specialist Frost." "You have been briefed well," Remington acknowledged, "though operational security prevents me from confirming or denying specific identities. Of course, what happens now?" "A specialized containment team is already inbound to secure the intelligence we have gathered. Your task force will be credited with developing a revolutionary countermeasure to emerging electronic threats. Several of your officers will receive commendations for their exceptional performance under pressure." "While Zero Horizon disappears back into the shadows," Blackwood concluded. "That is how we operate most effectively," Remington confirmed. "Though in this case, there has been a modification to standard protocol." He handed Blackwood a sealed envelope. "This contains new orders, for your eyes only. The joint operational model we tested here has proven more effective than anticipated. Command has authorized the formation of a permanent integrated unit combining conventional forces with Zero Horizon capabilities." Blackwood accepted the envelope with surprise. "That is a significant departure from established procedure." "The battlefield evolves, so must our methods," Remington replied. "Your experience at Redemption and your performance here have demonstrated your ability to work effectively with our assets. Few commanding officers can make that adjustment." The following day, as the containment team arrived to secure the intelligence gathered during the operation, Blackwood watched his staff interact with the newcomers. They had performed exceptionally well, adapting to a situation far beyond their original briefing. Each of them would return to their regular assignments believing they had participated in a groundbreaking electronic warfare exercise that had yielded valuable intelligence. None except Wright would know the full truth, that they had been part of something much larger, a hidden layer of warfare conducted by operatives whose very existence was classified beyond their security clearance. As Dr. Caldwell prepared to depart with the containment team, he approached Blackwood one final time. "Colonel, before I go, there is a message for you," he said quietly. "From Valkyrie Actual." Blackwood recognized the call sign immediately. "Major Frost?" Remington neither confirmed nor denied the identity. "The message is, the win does not matter if you understand it is not your enemy. I was told you would understand the significance." Blackwood nodded, recalling the story from Redemption about the impossible shot in Mogadishu. "I do. Thank you." After the containment team and Remington had departed, Blackwood opened the sealed orders he had been given. Inside was confirmation of everything Remington had told him, along with additional details about the new integrated unit he would command. But there was something else as well, a small note card with handwriting he did not recognize. "Some victories are measured not by what is gained, but by what is prevented. The best commanders understand the value of the battles that history never records." 3 months later, Lieutenant Colonel Blackwood stood in the briefing room of a new facility, addressing the officers who would form the core of Strategic Response Unit Echo. Only he and Major Wright knew the unit's true purpose, to serve as the visible component of a combined operation with Zero Horizon assets. As he concluded the briefing, a civilian consultant he had never met before entered the room quietly, taking a seat in the back. The woman's appearance was unremarkable, her credentials identifying her as Dr. Lyra Emerson, Systems Integration Specialist. Blackwood continued without pausing, but he recognized the focused intensity in the consultant's eyes. the efficient economy of her movements as she arranged her materials. Another ghost in the shadows, another guardian few would ever acknowledge or recognize. Have you ever known someone who never asked for recognition but deserved more than anyone else? Someone whose quiet contribution changed everything, yet who stepped away from the spotlight when the job was done. Their stories remind us that true strength often lies not in who stands at the podium, but in who stands silently in service when everything is on the line.